Saturday morning, and we've been talking about a lot of the success taking place at UCF recently. There are a lot of smart people over there. Joining me today to talk about it, Dr. Amit Joshi. He is an associate professor in the Department of Marketing at UCF. Good to see you. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Before we delve into your area of expertise, we just saw a couple of the stories there. You have 3D printed arms for a young boy. You have bending light to transfer data. Iron sharpens iron. We all know that saying.
Yes.
Is that the case at UCF right now? You have so many brilliant people on campus. Does that raise the level for everybody?
It absolutely does. I mean, the cool thing about UCF right now is it's so dynamic, right? I mean, everywhere you look, there's growth, there's dynamism, there's a desire to move forward. And you know, it's kind of contagious. You know, you feed off of other departments, you feed off of other people in there, and it's just a wonderful environment to be in right now.
When we did our live show for Good Day Orlando out on the campus, we had Dr. Hitt there, and he was talking about some of the success stories. And quite honestly, I have a degree in sciences. I couldn't even begin to follow some of the things he was talking about and some of the research taking place there. So this isn't, trying to get grants. This is groundbreaking research, isn't it?
This is real stuff. This is the real deal. I mean, I think UCF has now made the leap to a near elite research university, wherein, we don't just do research for getting grants or getting published. We do research for a lot of the while for changing the world. I mean, think about the little kid who has a new arm now, courtesy of a student at UCF. I mean, how incredible is that, right? I mean,
yeah, it's not just the professors, it is the students who are top-notch too.
And that's when you really know, right? That's when you really know that everybody's engaged, everybody is really into this culture, if you will, of moving ahead, of being different, of opportunity for everyone, which is essentially what we stand for.
Well, and you're one of the top business minds in the world right now. I believe I'll say that because you're getting published all over the place. So let's talk about some of the things that you've done recently. You made your name in business with some research on marketing and stock prices. Okay, marketing and stock price. Business pays attention to this. What did you find?
So this was research that was based off of my dissertation, and what we found in that is if you advertise, the obvious things happen. If you've advertised well, your sales will increase. If sales increase reasonably well, your stock price ought to go up. But what we find is that over and above that, there's also a direct effect of advertising. If you advertise, hopefully your brand equity is increasing. If your brand equity goes up, chances are, irrespective of your sales, there's an impact of brand equity on your stock price. So it's possible that advertising does not increase your sales at all. But irrespective of that, your stock price might be getting a little bit of a bump. And that, if you really think about it, is pretty crucial, because in today's day and age, it's not just enough to say, advertising works, trust me. Everybody's talking about accountability. Everybody wants to know what the bottom line is. Everybody's data-driven and everybody's analytical. So you have to justify every dollar that you spend. And this is a great way of doing it, because we're justifying not just with sales, which may or may not happen, but with the bottom line, which is stock price, which everybody likes.
I think that's a great point, because people spend $100,000 on an ad campaign. They don't see sales the next day. They think something went wrong.
Right.
Is that a faulty way to look at it?
I would say that's a short-term way to look at it, because sales could come today, sales could come tomorrow. Maybe the advertising you do today could lead to sales 6 months down the line. But the stock price is something that is a great forward-looking indicator that kind of captures a lot of these things beautifully. It's not perfect, but it's the best we have so far.
So when companies come up to you and say, all right, help us out with our marketing because we're not seeing the bang for the buck that we're spending right now, what do you say to them? Do you just say, be patient, it'll come, or change things up?
Well, the truism is half of all advertising doesn't work. The catch is which half, right?
Therein lies the billion-dollar question.
Therein lies the $540 billion question, which is what companies are going to be spending on advertising now.
Wow.
Exactly. The big mistake companies do a lot of the times is exactly what you refer to, which is looking at advertising and its returns in the short run, right? It's not often that you'll get returns on an immediate basis. You will have to wait in the long run to get returns on advertising. And even within advertising, there's two kinds of big picture advertising you can do. You can do sales or promotion-oriented advertising, the typical come right now to your nearest Chrysler dealer and get, 1.9% APR or $1,000 off or something like that. That's more price-oriented. But on the other hand, the other end of the spectrum is what we call brand advertising, wherein you're not really trying to promote, you're not trying to give any deal, you're just trying to improve the brand of your product. Think about Tide, think about Coca-Cola's campaigns. They don't say they'll give you a deal on Coca-Cola if you go to a Publix. They just say, hey, remember us, remember our brand, remember what our brand stands for. And that is the kind kind of advertising that leads to a long-run impact and that leads potentially to stock price impact.
I don't know if this is the right term, but I heard somebody in the radio business one time call it ghost advertising, where they don't even really mention the product. We saw that a lot in the Super Bowl.
Yes.
All right, it just makes you feel good. Budweiser, good at this. Hey, look at the puppies. Look at our Clydesdales.
Exactly.
Does that work when you don't mention what the brand does or a deal you can get on it?
When the brand is well established, right?
So you got to be known by
You got to
everybody.
be known.
before you go
Now,
for that.
advertising has three roles: inform, persuade, and remind. That's it. If you're trying to inform people of a brand, you cannot do it with ghost advertising. You got to build a brand. I cannot do it for a new product. But if you're talking about something like Budweiser, you're talking about Coca-Cola, you're talking about all these brands, you're talking about Geico. They've got 6 different types of commercials. They've got the caveman, they've got the gecko, they've got all sorts of mix and match commercials. But they're such a well-known brand by now that they can do all these different things and still build their brand.
This may be too generic of a question, but where do most companies get it wrong when they try and expand their business in advertising?
Well, most companies, the simple answer is it depends. But
It was a very generic question because I'm sure there's a lot of ways companies get it wrong.
This is true. This is true. But in general, companies get it wrong most of the times by focusing more on sales promotion and price-related advertising rather than concentrating on brand building and branding advertising. Because what consistently marketing has shown across products, across industries, it does not matter, is brand advertising will have a long-term impact. Price-related advertising, price cuts, those sorts of things have a very short-term impact, and in fact, they can have a negative long-term impact, even on the stock price.
Now, so we're also in the era of big data. Everybody wants to see numbers. People are number crunching. I think of baseball. I mean, baseball, everything is so number driven that you can't do anything without numbers.
Right.
Business is the same way, right? How are people using big numbers, big data in order to drive their business right now?
So we are in what is now known as a big data 3.0 or analytics 3.0 kind of an era. When we started off, let's say in the 1950s with the computer revolution, when we actually started generating tons of data, we had big data even back then. That was known as analytics 1.0, wherein you got data, you just try to find correlations, right? If this happens, then that. I mean, if it rains, then Walmart sells more peaches or something like this. That's an actual thing or something. Then around 2000, you got into analytics 2.0, wherein it was not just correlational, but it was you try to predict stuff, which is anytime people go in to do this is how they behave, or this is how we can change the behavior. And now what's happened is the internet has become two-way. There's a lot of consumer feedback. Consumers run the internet now. Wikipedia, it's completely developed by consumers. Social media, online reviews, everything is run by consumers. Companies have very little control. So now using that kind of a data, you've gone to analytics 3.0, wherein what happens is it is prescriptive. You don't just predict, but then you tell managers, okay, here is what I think is going to happen, and here is what I think you as a manager ought to do. And the classic example of something like that was the Jeopardy playing computer, Watson.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it could analyze, it could predict the right answer, and then it could pick from a range of right answers, saying, I know what, of these 3 answers, I think this might be the right answer, and it could do that in a fraction of a second. And that's the Google self-driving car. It's a classic example of prescriptive analytics, wherein it just doesn't figure out what the car in front of it is going to do, or all the other 20 cars around it, but what it should do on its own to kind of navigate through that.
It's amazing.
It is incredible.
All right, we're going to talk about, speaking of technology, how to use social media to expand your business. Another way people may or may not get it right. We're going to debate Twitter versus Facebook as well. It's coming up right here on Orlando Matters.